Now, because I'm a Southerner in my country, I can't stand up and give a speech or talk. I have to tell a story. So I want to tell you the story of how Birchville, Alabama came to be. You all know about Hurricane Katrina. Everyone knows, because it hit Louisiana. I mean, so Alabama was one of the 3 states that was impacted by Hurricane Katrina. And so when our coastline was hit by the hurricane, we got a lot of airplanes in the sky to fly and take pictures of our coastline. And so I take these pictures to my governor, the chief executive in my state, and I say, Governor, this is what our coastline looks like now that Hurricane Katrina has passed. And my governor, he's much smarter than I am. That's why he's the governor. He looks at me and he says, this doesn't really tell me what I need to know. I can't determine how much damage affected the coastline until I know what the coastline looked like before the hurricane. So he says, go find me the imagery or the orthographic photos of the coastline before the hurricane. Show me that, and then show me this. So I go rushing out to look for the imagery of our coastline before the storm. And I couldn't find it. I knew that it existed, but I couldn't find it. It was a long walk back to the governor's office to say, I can't find it. And so he says, time out. We can do better than this, because I know that we spend in the state of Alabama millions of dollars every year taking pictures of our land for lots of different purposes and reasons, whether it's tax collection or environmental management. We have the pictures. And you mean to tell me that when we have a national or natural disaster of this magnitude that I can't get the pictures when I want them? So he turned to me, and I'm sure that you have all been in this situation. There were 4 or 5 other members of the governor's cabinet, of which I serve as the Director of Homeland Security, sitting around a table. And everyone knew that the governor was fixing to tell somebody what they wanted, and so they ducked. I didn't duck. And the governor looks and he says, okay, Jim, you go figure out a way to get all of the orthographic imagery in our state in one place, so that when something like this happens, we will have it. Okay. He read my biography to you. Okay, I was in the Army the United States Army for 20 years as a soldier. I was an infantryman, okay? They don't put the smartest guys in the infantry, all right? So I'm not a real tech-savvy guy. So I'm very lucky, though, because I petitioned the Army 2 or 3 years ago to give me a scientist for my staff, where I don't have to pay his salary. Now, that's a good deal, okay? I don't know about the economics in Canada, but in Alabama, we can afford free. So the Army gives me a rocket scientist on my staff. So I turn to the rocket scientist and I say, hey, smart guy, this is what the governor wants. He wants to be able to capture all of this imagery on one platform. Go figure out how to do this. All right, that smart guy is sitting right there. His name is Mr. Norman Goddard. You've heard his bio, but I just referred to him as my rocket scientist. And he really is a rocket scientist. He doesn't look real smart, but he really is really smart. So I turned to my rocket scientist and I say, hey Norman, this is the problem. Help me find a solution. Norman partners with a young lady that served the state of Alabama. She probably knows more about GIS than anyone in the state. And together, they started looking at ways to do what the governor asked us to do. And so we looked inside of the United States government, because Norman works for the Department of Defense, Department of the Army. And so we looked at a number of classified programs to see if we found something that could fit. And when we didn't find something, we began to look at industry. And we brought in a lot of different companies to show us what they had available. But we put a couple of limitations on industry. We said, look, no PowerPoint presentation. It can't be something that you're thinking about. It has to be something that you have available right now. It has to be affordable, because I don't have a lot of money. It has to be maintainable, sustainable, and I have to have it today, not a year from now. So we looked at a lot of different companies, and then we settled on a company. They hate when I say this, but we settled on a company that nobody had really heard of. Maybe you've heard of them. It's called Google. I tell the people at Google that when we went with Google 2 years ago, nobody had heard of them. But now they work with Alabama and everybody knows who Google is. Right? Stock is split 3 or 4 times. So we settled on Google. And we bought a license with Google Earth Enterprise that was very affordable. And they were great partners because my rocket scientists sat in a room with some of Google's rocket scientists, and we sort of talked through a vision, and Google had worked with us to make sure that we could make that vision possible. So we're very appreciative in Alabama of our relationship with Google. So we buy a license with Google Earth Enterprise, and I'm not going to tell you now, but during the questions, ask me how much it cost. Okay? I'm not going to tell you now. I want you to ask me later how much you think it cost. And what we learned is with this enterprise license, we could go out and find the imagery that existed in our state and put it on our globe. The difference is when you go on Google and Google your house, that's all you can do is look at your house. You can go left, you can look right, you can see the nice swimming pool that your neighbor has built that you don't have, but you can't do much else. What we learned with Virtual Alabama is that if it is your imagery that is owned by your state, and you type in your address and Google your house, once you look at your house, you can do all kinds of things to the imagery. If you want to put in the gas lines to your house, or the water lines to the house, or the sewer lines to the house, or the floodplain information in your neighborhood, or where the stoplights are, or the stop signs are, or any kind of layers of information, you can load it in on top of the imagery that you own. When we discovered that, we said, wow, this might be pretty useful to first responders, particularly. And so we set out trying to understand what we had, but we needed to get the imagery. That was the hard part. Where was the imagery in Alabama? In our state, a lot of the imagery resides at the local, the county level, all right? And it may be the same in Canada, I don't know, but we discovered that the best imagery that exists is local imagery. And they spend a lot of money. So, you know, I go into a county as a Homeland Security Director and say, hey, I'd like for you to give me your county imagery, and they laugh at me. They say, I'm not going to, I paid $1 million for this imagery. Why would I give it to you? You know, they assume that you have some financial gain, or you should be paying for the imagery or something. They won't just give it to you. But I didn't have a lot of money. And if my governor had said, hey, Jim, I want you to go contract an airplane and fly the state of Alabama and take all new imagery, it's $45 million. I can't just write a check. I don't have that kind of money.